Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Tzeentch here. Well, why Tzeentch? Well, because we got some news today about upcoming updates for Shadows of Change. And folks, yes, it was focused on the Changelings faction, which of course is going to be Tzeentch. And I'm going to go ahead and give you the too long didn't listen version here, which is, at least in my opinion, Tzeentch is not nearly as exciting as the news that we had about Cathay. Now, could I expect every faction to be like that cool, like a legendary hero and all the cool stuff? Probably not. But anyway, let's talk through what CA tells us today and what we're getting. So again, as part of the overall push from feedback and obviously the huge blowback from the fan base, CA is of course sprucing up the Shadows of Change DLC and adding more content to it so that it puts away one of the frustrations that the fan base had, which was that they thought that the price of the Shadows of Change DLC went up so much that it just wasn't reflective of what you would expect at that price range. And so they're talking about adding in more things. Now, before we get to that, we might want to go ahead and read this little part real quick at the very beginning here. And I believe this same one is from Rich. Rich tells us that the team was kind of hoping to release, I think, this week originally, but it didn't work out. They're working hard, they're making good progress, and it sounds like that they're hoping to release it later this month. But he says I'll be back later this week with more information, talking about the characters to Kislev, and it sounds like, you know, later this month means obviously they're targeting sometime this month. Now, they may or may not be able to deliver it then, but that's just kind of the time frame, and I am super excited to maybe see what they say about Kislev. Now, for me, I'm going to go ahead and put this out here as a disclaimer for anybody who doesn't know. I don't like the Chaos factions. I don't find them particularly interesting to play. I think they make great fodder in a campaign to kill, because personally I find them somewhat unlikable and not my favorite to play. Now, I do play them from time to time, and I have fun with them usually when I play them, but they're just not like high on my list of factions I like. So I personally wouldn't have been as excited about the Tzeentch add-ons as I would have, say, like Kislev or Cathay. But that said, even if I put my bias aside, which I am definitely biased in that regard, I just think that the additions for Cathay are much more exciting. The Demon factions to me are just not all that much fun to play. Now, Tzeentch is probably the most fun of the Demon factions because they at least have a little unit variety and some crazy pastel color schemes and a lot of magic and stuff like that. So I think if anybody is tolerable to play from a demon standpoint or a monogod standpoint, it's going to be Tzeentch. And they are going to get a few add-ons that they did need. Now, there's a few things that they mention in here. First, they say they wanted to broaden the connection between Tzeentch and the Beastmen, which was first established with the introduction of Zangors in the DLC's original release. So obviously they're going to tie some things into the Beastmen here in terms of some of this stuff. But they also mentioned that people were looking for some more melee capability within Tzeentch's army, and so that's where some of their changes are coming. And then they also say they're bringing demonic flying Changebringers, which they say is a classic Tzeentch unit from Storm of Chaos book from back in 2004, flamers riding on disc. So this ought to be interesting. So what they're going to add is Chaos Lords of Tzeentch. You can see a little, you know, artwork thing here, and they give you a little bit of lore if you want to read through that. But essentially, it's a marked Chaos Lord, similar to some of the others we've seen, except this one gives Tzeentch a, you know, I think a little more sustainable, like more armored, generic offering for a Lord. This will probably be helpful in multiplayer, and it should be fun in the campaign as well, in the sense that it's always nice to have more Lord options in campaign. And having something that's armored and more melee focused will definitely give you something a little bit different to tinker with. You can see here kind of their artwork and ideas on it. It's going to be a halberd arm, so I would expect AP anti-large in terms of the damage profile and capabilities, but there's a shield there as well, so we can expect high armor and high defense. So this is probably a quite survivable Lord who's going to be good against large foes and probably just good in general in melee. That's typically what we see from these Chaos Lords that are melee focused. And it does say that as far as mounts go, you could have a Chaos Steed, a Chaos Chariot, or a Disc of Tzeentch. And the Disc of Tzeentch option might be pretty interesting here. Chaos Steed is pretty standard. Chariot is interesting if you're really focused against infantry. But so there you go. That's the first addition to the Tzeentch roster. The second one is going to be the Exalted Hero of Tzeentch, and they talked for a minute about, like, where should they go for the inspiration for this, and they show this old metal mini from the Warhammer Fantasy Battles, the 2 heads and 2 swords, and they talk a little bit about this Exalted Hero. So yeah, this is going to be another melee, character, a generic melee hero that you can stick into your armies. And this, again, character art here that we're seeing, it's actually 3 heads this time. Again, halberd armed. So again, we probably expect AP anti-large. Not a guarantee, but that's typically the case with the halberd. Usually the halberd characters maybe trade a little bit lower attack for a good damage profile and some good defense. But in any case, it kind of does tell you here, and as far as this, it does say anti-large specialist here. And then Opportunist says, always scheming to seek a path to greater glory, the Exalted Hero Tzeentch takes command of the Lord if the Lord is slain, bolstering leadership. So I mean, that's always nice there too. So that's a pretty cool feature for an army if you lose your Lord. And then as far as mounts, again, Chaos Steed, Chariot, Disc. So same kind of stuff we can expect there. So a cool companion character to go along with your Chaos Lord, or to support your Herald of Tzeentch, or your Demon Prince, or whatever it is that you've got going on in the army. And now they're going to start talking about some of the units they want to introduce. So they introduced the Zangors, and they did tell you, by the way, they talk here, no beaks. I guess some people expected Zangors to have beaks because they did in Age of Sigmar, and they basically were just saying, hey, in the source material for Warhammer's Fantasy Battles, they didn't have beaks. I've heard this argument back and forth about beaks. I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't really care one way or the other. It may be possible that beaks is something they might have wanted to do, but maybe it was going to take too much work or effort and they just didn't have time. Or it's possible, I guess, that Games Workshop doesn't want them having like a game, like an Age of Sigmar type thing in here. But I don't know, because they've given them some creative license back in the day. But anyway, whatever. All that kind of seems aside. It talks a little bit about the Beastmen here. Of course, I'll have this linked in the description if you want to go read that. I'm not going to read all that out. But they're talking about bringing in Centaurs of Tzeentch. And this ought to be pretty interesting. Again, it looks like we're seeing kind of like an axe type weapon here with them. Cool color scheming, a little bit of that pastel color scheme coming in. And it's basically, they describe it as a fast, hard-hitting unit, which is what Centaurs already are. It says they carry great weapons, so this we should assume is going to be armor piercing. And then they carry a mark of Tzeentch that grants them magical attacks and barriers. So that's pretty cool. And when we go here, this arcane charge ability they talk about here. So it says initially introduced with Zangors. The ability has been adopted by the Centaurs. I think this is the more you're casting spells, the more powerful they become, if I remember right. So that's a pretty cool feature, and again, makes them like a mobile Zangor type unit. Centaurs are already a very useful unit. This is going to be a dangerous addition to the roster for Tzeentch, because Tzeentch is already, I think, dangerous in the right situations, and this is going to give them some needed speed. Now, Centaurs are a bit of a glass cannon. The addition of the barrier could be kind of cool, but they are interesting in the fact that they're fast and they provide some good hitting power, and this great weapon variant was a good one to begin with. So this is an interesting addition to the Tzeentch roster. And then as far as the other unit here, they mentioned Changebringers. So again, this was a flying flamer on a disc, essentially. And they give some of the artwork behind that, and then give us an idea what it is going to be looking like in game down here. It says Changebringers are one of the ultimate expressions of chaotic nature of Tzeentch. It says they take to the skies, benefiting from the greatly increased maneuverability. One can expect, too, that this is going to greatly benefit their line of sight, which is one of the challenges you get with flamers. Line of sight may not be good. I feel like this unit could be extremely dangerous in the right situations. It might be difficult to get them into the right position in multiplayer because you're up against another human who's going to be well aware of it. But I feel like that against a player in campaign, if there's a bunch of these, it could be a pain. But not only that, if you are the player and you use these right, I feel like these things are going to absolutely melt infantry blobs. And could be a really fun unit for the player to take on and use as they play through their campaign. That said, if they're anything like regular flamers, they probably die relatively easy in melee and to range fire. But an interesting unit here nonetheless. And that's it. So that is the update. So I think, again, in my biased opinion, this isn't as exciting as it was for Cathay. And I mean, even outside of my biased opinion, it seems like quantitative and qualitatively, this just isn't as exciting as Cathay. You all tell me if you think I'm wrong. Maybe the Changeling was just so exciting to begin with that they just didn't need quite as much excitement. I don't know. I feel like the additions to Cathay are cool. Am I upset about these? No, I'm not. These are good additions. It's just that they seem a little less exciting than Cathay. That's all I'm saying about it. Speaking of which, I did have a couple of comments. It seems like some people were very excited about the Cathay changes. They're happy to see the direction CA is taking. I had comments to the opposite, which is, again, totally you're right to think that way. But I had some comments to the opposite that folks were saying, like, basically kind of insinuating that they feel like maybe we're forgiving CA too easily and that we shouldn't jump back on the bus. And here's my position. CA is obviously adding content back for free here, and we can take the pessimistic look. We can be angry still about what's happened, rightfully angry about a lot of the things that happened, and we can keep that anger and we can keep it going, and we can not enjoy our game, and we can throw this back in the face of CA and say this isn't good enough, at which point they are going to stop trying because they're going to think that nothing pleases us, and you're still mad, and you won't be enjoying your game. So yes, I'm excited about it. Number one, because I want to enjoy my game again. I'm tired of being frustrated with it. I see the company reaching out. I see them apologizing. I see them trying to make it better. And yes, I will take that, and I will try to move in a positive direction with it. And as long as they continue to do the right thing, I'm going to be excited about it. So yeah, I don't agree with the situation that like, nah, hey, we can't forgive them that easy. We should still be mad. And that's why. But, you know, again, you're free to take whatever path you want on this. I'm not here to tell you how to think about your game. You bought the game. You can feel however you want. But I am curious, what do you all think so far of the changes? And again, be honest. I'm not going to chase you out of the comments. I don't want any of you all to chase anybody else out of the comments. I really do like to hear what people think, even if it disagrees with me, because sometimes it's perspective that you need. Anyway, hopefully this was helpful to let you all know what's coming soon, and as soon as they announce the stuff for Kislev, I will cover that as well. HeirofCarthage, signing out. I will see you all soon with some more action in Total War Warhammer 3.